after Corona or after crisis era. Hello, everyone. Hello, Dr. Michael Lightman. And we are beginning an educational course called the Post-Coronavirus Era. We found ourselves all together in a reality where we find ourselves in a complete interconnection that we really feel, all of us, and on the other hand, that we are egoistically rejected by one another. And this contradiction changes the system of relationship between people and the system of values in society. Meaning, either we wait for nature to correct us by its blows, that it sends us a virus or something else in a few months or years, or we ourselves human beings, the cradle of civilization, that we have to do it ourselves. So the first question to you is, people relate to still objects like a computer or a car. They talk to these objects. Sometimes you get mad at a car if it breaks down, or sometimes we relate to nature the same way. We get mad at nature, we ask what's going on, why this punishment. What do you think from your point of view? Does nature have some kind of, does it have feelings, an intellect, reason? Are we punished for something, or is this just evolutional? Man is a harmoniously connected. Man is harmoniously connected with nature, meaning we are in a completely closed system. We and nature. We can't differentiate ourselves from nature or nature from ourselves. And so, if something happens, it happens in general, in all of nature, in this entire global and integral system. And there needn't be a question separately to man and separately to nature. We are its parts. The matter that, besides this, we can maybe somehow control ourselves, evaluate ourselves, study how interdependent or how interdependent we and nature are. All of these things, these are simply our options, but they have to be very clearly divided into what we can study and understand. This is one thing. And the other thing is, what can we change? What can we change in nature and in ourselves? This is the second thing, because actually, our entire problem with nature is that we are breaching its harmony, our connection with our balance with nature. When man was still on the level of animals, on the animate level, we all came from that state. We all developed from there. Then there were no problems. Man acted the way that he did, coming from his understanding, feeling, like any other part of nature. Afterwards, as his intellect developed, and when about 6,000 years ago he started acquiring egoistic qualities, then he started parting from nature, distancing from it, being opposed to it, and different kinds of relationships started developing between people. They became egoistic against each other, and here came a problem. Being in the opposition between man and nature, between nature and human society. Where can we find in nature a hint to some kind of reason, feelings, wisdom, I don't know. We can't see anything in nature because we see everything through ourselves. And so what follows is that in nature, there is nothing, but everything goes through us, comes through us. Frequently you say that we have to learn from nature. How can an ordinary person look at what goes on in nature and start learning something from it? What can you learn from nature? I think that after we have somewhat studied our corporeal nature, and we have seen that it is one tightly connected system, locked system. We have to only learn how can we become an integral, inseparable part of that one system. How can we integrally enter it so that nature and we will feel comfortable together? Look, a contemporary person, skeptic contemporary person, looks at nature as, something that we can deplete, somewhere we can rest, some laboratory where you can do different research. From your point of view, what is nature? Nature is one integral organism that consists of the levels of the still, vegetative, animate, and people. On the still, vegetative, and animate levels, these levels exist in nature, integrally connected between themselves, and they feel their interdependence. And the human level has an increased ego, due to which man doesn't want to take the surrounding world into consideration and wants to bend it, adjust it to itself, not to adjust himself to nature, but to adjust nature to himself. And here he's making a fatal mistake, because man is egoistically developing, but his entire development leads him eventually to big problems. My next question is, we have already learned that in nature there are two forces. The one force is the force of bestowal, that builds integral systems, this is how our systems are built, this is how matter is built. In cosmology, there was this phase when particles started coming together, this is how our planet was created. And there is the force of rejection. Thanks to it, nature is various, multifaceted. Is this one force, or that out of it come two forces, or are these two forces? Because in Kabbalah there's just one force, from what I know, called none else besides him. No, there is one united force that directs all of nature towards connection, and it develops everything that happens in nature. But heading towards this connection, unity, consists of many different movements. There are things that are in opposition or opposite to each other, that it seems to us that they're going in completely different directions, that they're not headed towards future unification or anything, but it only seems to us that way because we don't see the entire picture. Okay, these two forces appear in our world, like in the Chinese philosophy, yin and yang, and or good and bad, or these two forces, they exist everywhere. Yes, but completing each other, they bring everything to one integral system. So maybe this is something that we can learn from nature, that it balances out, evens out these two forces. Nature balances out these two forces and aspires for equilibrium, but the thing is that in man these two forces are not in balance at all, because the quality of reception and the quality of bestowal that we acquire, the way that they appear in us, they're not equal at all. The quality of reception is close to me, familiar, I like it, and so on. But the quality of giving, of bestowal, what is that? In order to bestow, I have to feel the other, that they're close to me, and I don't feel that. Therefore, when nature has created in us the feeling only of ourself, our sense of self, by that it detached from us the other part, the care and concern for what's not me, and so I can't come to equilibrium using my natural qualities. To the contrary, the more I develop egoistically, only by this one force of reception to acquire, and therefore my participation in nature is more and more harmful. So it's an interesting example. I've read, how does nature balance out the ego in hunters, for example? If such an ego erupts in, suppose, wolves, then the number of rabbits in the forest decreases, and the wolves themselves, they die from hunger, and then nature compensates, completes, supplements, and so on. Does the same happen in society? The balance between altruism and egoism, receiving and giving. Suppose with the coronavirus, it also kind of balances it out, right? Yeah, but it's much more complicated. It happens in a much more complicated way than in the animal world, because here there are many more factors, and we will not see this equilibrium. We have the ability, we have freedom of choice, not like a wolf or a rabbit have. So a wolf or a rabbit, you can say that they're a part of the same system, only that they influence each other, mutually influence each other, even each other out, and there is some kind of one formula that activates them. But not so with human beings. Human beings cannot balance themselves this way, because the quality of egoism, of reception, of at the expense of others, of controlling others, of envy, things that animals don't have, this prevails in people and leads them to complete destruction. Would it be possible to say that connection, the connection that you talk about so much in your lectures, is that balance between giving and receiving? Well, in society, if this is what we're talking about. Meaning the process of connection is some kind of balance between how much society receives and how much it gives. Yep. This is the process of connection, but the thing is that it's unclear to anyone how many economical theories, political theories are there, social theories, and so on, all intermingled. But up until now, no one knows what to do about all of this. As many people you have, this is the number of opinions that you have. This is what I wanted to ask about. The roots of connection. In your books, you write that the solution for any problem is connection. I tried to find where does it say about that. Actually, it's easy to learn that on the level of elementary particles, it is clear how they all connect, and more complicated matter, and we can see this connection on the animate level, even on the level of cells. When the cells came together a few billions of years ago, more complex organisms were formed as a result, with understanding, consciousness, and so on. But as you said, that once it reaches society, the level of society, which is a very complex system, even though that what you said works, meaning that a person has to know how much he receives and how much he gives, is there some kind of clear law? How can I find out? This is something that you can't know because your ego pushes you out of this system. If in a group of wolves, in a pack of wolves, or among rabbits, or among animals, doesn't matter which, there's a clear understanding and hierarchy and connection, the need to connect and so on, understanding what a correct pact is, or herd and so on, then a human herd, in a human herd there is no such law. And so what you have here is that, unfortunately, we are worse than animals. There are no principles or anything here. So the question is, what does nature want from human beings? If in nature everything works automatically, instinctively, what does it want from nature? It wants of nature to acknowledge that he is higher than the still vegetative inanimate nature, that he is not a part of the animate level or nature, and that he can't automatically create such a society like wolves or rabbits and so on, and therefore he has to learn who he is. And this way, and how can he come to a correct dynamic equilibrium, balance, regardless of his constant development? So it's dynamic. And this is what nature demands of man. Man has to understand the general law of nature and to implement it in society. And this way, to create such a connection between people that would, on the one hand, give an answer to the human needs, that this is not an animal but a human being that develops egoistically all the time, wanting to bend everyone and everything under himself, to control everything. On the other hand, he has to bring himself to a correct connection, balance in relation, or so that there will be such a system of interconnections created between people and all the rest of the levels of nature, still vegetative and animate, so that this system will work in complete balance, agreement, integration between its parts. And this is a state that a person can't understand. He can't even create his small society. I'm not even talking about how he relates to the still vegetative inanimate. He and everything only destroys man. This is man's actually only problem, his ego. So what we have to do is to find out somehow how can we start controlling this ego, somehow rationally limiting it, finding out how should we behave between ourselves, and so on. Well, this is what our course will be teaching. I want to give several examples about how much we really don't understand the interconnection of man and nature, and not even mentioning the connections between us, people, that are hidden altogether. Suppose, like the example of trying to destroy pigeons in China in the 50s, that brought to mass hunger, or the trying to destroy cats in Korea, which brought to a tremendous amount of rats and snakes and whatnot, and they had to import cats from neighboring countries. Also, trying to destroy wolves, because they actually kill off only the ill animals. And so, well, there are many such examples. But still, we want to talk about human beings. So my question is about the human level. Meaning, you agree that the general in nature is more important than the particular? Yes, but not one at the expense of the other. If we take an integral system, then every part in it, in its value, equals the entire system. Otherwise, the system too will not be integral, whole, and complete. If man is necessary for the general system, he exists. If not, he doesn't. Is this correct? I can say that about the still vegetative and animate nature, but I can't say that about human nature. Because man, he interferes with his ego, he controls all of nature, and he can do anything and everything, even against common sense. Scientists say that all systems go through some kind of an evolutional process. At first there's rejection, separation, and in order to keep advancing to the next state of connection, this has to happen on a higher level. So what's interesting is that nature has divided us now by this virus, and we're developing some kind of a virtual reality. What is the next level of our connection? We will have to nonetheless acknowledge that our connection has to be first and foremost integral to lead us to connection. We're not animals that have to connect instinctively. We're human beings. We're against this connection in us. Or the ego controls us, but we'll have to understand. Repeat it? Repeat, please. Okay, we had a question from one of our listeners. He says, how is it possible that the highest is he who can destroy millions like himself? How is it that the king of nature is capable for his own egoistic ideas, not only to destroy others, but also himself? How does that coincide with the developed intellect that man has? This is what we have to understand, that this is how we're created. It's simply amazing how nature has made us as if wise, reasonable. On the other hand, it filled us with such an ego that can't take anything into consideration. Meaning, if you take any animal and put it in front of a bowl with food, he'll feel, is it good or bad for him? And you'll put man in front of a bowl with food, even if he'll feel bad as a result. It's tasty, he wants to eat it. That's the problem with all of our senses. Because on the one hand, we want, on the other hand, we don't understand what we want, meaning we do not coincide with our we can't control our desires. They control us, and what controls animals is instinct. You don't have hate, love, pleasant, unpleasant. It's only good or bad, and this is embedded in their organism, and we don't have that. So is it possible to say that man is the cradle of civilization, but only in potential? Yes, but only after he finishes his recognition of evil and its correction. Our topic is the unification, the oneness of nature. Could I say that it consists of the oneness of contradictions? Yes. So that's the law. Yes, we will have to come to a state where we will clearly understand that we consist of two opposite qualities and that we have to even them out, what we call the third line of our behavior. So we can't destroy or annul our ego, but only balance, even it out. Yeah. So, it's possible to reach such conclusions, correct me if I'm wrong, that our world is interconnected. Absolutely. And there's no need to prove it to anyone. We say someone ate a bat in China, and today everyone is in quarantine. So we live in an interconnected world. We're not a separate part of nature. Also, there's harmony on all levels of nature besides on the human level. Right. Man has to come to harmony himself. Only in human society, every element works only for himself and not for the entire system. This is our so-called egoism. Is it possible to say that man is the most opposite part to nature? Opposed, opposite, yes. But still, we are a part of nature. We're not above nature. Unfortunately, we're a part of it, and we have to, as quickly as possible, bring ourselves to complete it, to become an integral part of nature. Also, nature has a goal, right? Nature's goal is to bring itself entirely to integral balance, meaning to develop all of its parts to the fullest, up to these opposite opposing states, and along with it, equilibrium, balance. Okay, and we have to do it ourselves in society, human beings. Okay. And the reason for all of our problems, starting with different natural disasters and up to the coronavirus, suppose, is the lack of balance in society between the desire to receive from society and to give to society. Right. Society destroys itself and everything around it. Were we really to be balanced between us, were we corrected, not egoistic, we would have balanced out the ego by connection and love, we would have seen how all of nature follows. And so I understand that to balance these two states or these two desires, tendencies in a person, it's an entire science. Can man do this? This is man's obligation to reveal all the laws of his nature and the surrounding nature and to bring all of this to a complete integral interconnection. This is man's goal, not only here and now, his mission, not only here and now, but in general. It's a cosmic mission. Okay, I have a final question. These are questions, up until now, these are questions that I collected, and now this is my question. So what follows is that for thousands of years, well, at least 3,000 years or more, about 3,000 years ago, people discovered the law of mutual responsibility, love another as yourself. It was written about it. It's the same law that exists on the level of elementary particles. So how is it that we know about this law for thousands of years and it doesn't help us? Meaning we can't do anything. We can't balance out our ego. But it is against our nature. Our nature is that I have to be superior to everyone, to bend everyone under me, to receive everything, not to give anything to anyone, take no one into consideration. This is the law of egoism that exists in every person. Furthermore, it's not only to take for yourself, but the ego is on the human level, meaning it's not just that like with an animal, I drag some piece of meat for myself and I don't share it. But I want for everyone, I want to be superior to everyone, for everyone to be my slaves. I want to be in absolute control over the entire world. And if someone thinks that this is not how it is, then he simply doesn't know himself well enough. So this is the question, and a few thousand years ago people already knew, and they said that love covers all crimes, meaning the law of unity, but on the level of society. People knew this. Thousands of years went by. Probably a few more thousands of years have to go by until we'll reach this. Possibly. Possibly. I'm not saying that it has to come to an end today. But this is what we're headed toward. We're headed toward the recognition of evil, that we can't live inside our own nature. By this we kill ourselves and destroy life on Earth altogether. And we have to somehow elevate, raise ourselves above our ego, above our instincts, and to bring ourselves to an integral inner connection. Well, let's hope that it'll take less time. Thank you very much. And until we meet again, all the best.